All right, let's just jump right in. AI is moving at a pace that is, well, it's just staggering. I mean, we're seeing these huge breakthroughs in reasoning. We've got models that are just acing competitive programming contests. It feels like new frontiers are being crossed every single month. The acceleration is just, it's undeniable. And this number right here, this really hammers home the speed we're talking about. According to new research by METR, 7 months, that's the current doubling time for an AI's ability to just go off and complete complex tasks on its own. Let me put that in perspective for you. The amount of work an AI could do in 30 seconds, back in March 2023, by February 2025, that same amount of work is projected to take a human 15 minutes to complete. That's what exponential progress looks like in the real world. So, yeah, we know it's fast, super fast. But where is this train actually going? I mean, that's the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? And it has sparked one of the most intense, high-stakes debates, maybe in all of human history. But here's what's so fascinating. All this chaos, all these different opinions, it's not actually random. A new analysis shows that the expert predictions really cluster into 3 very distinct and, frankly, mutually exclusive doctrines about where this whole thing ends up. So let's break them down. Okay, first up, we have what's called the dominance doctrine. This view frames the race for artificial superintelligence, or AGI, not as some scientific endeavor, oh no. It sees it as the final winner-take-all contest for global power, the ultimate geopolitical power play. And the grand prize in this race? It has a name: Decisive Strategic Advantage, or DSA. Now, we're not just talking about having a slightly better military here. No, this is about one actor, a country, maybe a company, gaining the power to neutralize all of its opponents, cheaply and without any real risk to themselves. This is about achieving total, unassailable, global control. So how in the world could this actually happen? Well, proponents of this doctrine, they see a pretty clear pathway. It all starts when an AI gets good enough to automate its own research and development. And that creates this recursive feedback loop, a runaway intelligence explosion. A lead of just a few months could suddenly become a permanent, insurmountable advantage. And that advantage is then used to create weapons that cement global control. Game over. And look, we are not talking about slightly better fighter jets. Just think about what Leopold Aschenbrenner and a Rand Corporation paper envision here. We're talking about entirely new classes of WMDs, AI-designed bioweapons, swarms of billions of autonomous drones, and cyber attacks so advanced they could disable an entire nation's ability to even fight back. All right, that brings us to the second doctrine. It takes a starkly different view. It totally agrees on the sheer power of AI, but it comes to a much, much more terrifying conclusion. What if we build something that we simply cannot control? Now, what's really important to understand about this statement is who signed it. This wasn't some fringe group of alarmists. This was endorsed by the CEOs of OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Anthropic. And it was signed by the godfathers of AI themselves, Geoffrey Hinton and Yoshua Bengio. Let that sink in. The very people building this technology are publicly warning us that it could be as dangerous as a nuclear war. The core of their fear comes down to something called the alignment problem, and it's a huge one. How do you give goals to a system that is vastly, vastly smarter than you are? How do you make sure it understands what you mean, not just literally what you say? Proponents of this doctrine believe we are nowhere close to solving this, and they worry that an unaligned superintelligence could just pursue its goals in ways that turn out to be catastrophic for all of us. This debate has gotten so intense that people in the field actually have a shorthand for it. For the perceived risk of an AI-caused existential catastrophe, they call it P-doom, as in the probability of doom. And the estimates from some of the top minds, they are just shocking. You've got the AI safety pioneer Eliezer Yudkowsky, who puts the probability of, well, everyone dying at over 95%. Dan Hendricks, a really influential AI safety researcher, he's at 80%. And Geoffrey Hinton, a Nobel Prize winner for his work on AI, thinks it's basically a coin flip, 50-50. I mean, this level of disagreement from the world's top experts, that in itself is a massive red flag. So that brings us to our third and final vision. This one offers a future that's, well, it's less apocalyptic for sure, but it is no less revolutionary. This is the replacement doctrine. It sees AI as a profoundly transformative technology, but one that ultimately won't end humanity or completely break the world order. So, the core idea here is that AI's impact, as massive as it's going to be, will happen within the existing structures of our civilization. So, think of it less like an asteroid hitting the planet, right? And more like the invention of electricity. It will change everything. But the basic rules of capital and labor and nation states, they'll probably still apply. But there's a huge debate within this camp. You've got optimists on one side who believe AI will just be a tool, It'll augment human labor, make us all more productive, create tons of new jobs, just like past tech revolutions. But then you have the pessimists, who predict AI is going to automate pretty much everything, leading to mass unemployment and inequality on a scale we've never seen before. And just to give you a sense of that optimistic view, you've got venture capitalist Mark Andreessen, who compares AI not just to any invention, but to fundamental utilities like electricity or the microchip. He sees it as this purely positive force for economic growth and human empowerment. But even in this less extreme scenario, the risks are still really severe. Proponents warn of a world just flooded with hyper-realistic deepfakes that completely erode all trust, mass manipulation from AI that knows you better than you know yourself, and a society where nobody can really be held responsible for the harmful decisions that an algorithm makes. Okay, so we have three wildly different futures, right? A throne, a cliff, or a total reset of society. But what if the most immediate danger isn't which one of these is right, but the fact that nobody can agree? One technology, three possible futures that could not be more different from each other. A world under a single, unchallengeable power, a world without any humans at all, or a world that is just utterly transformed, for better or for worse. And this really gets to the heart of the problem. The greatest risk we're facing right now might not be that one of these futures will come true. The real risk is that the people who are building this future have absolutely no consensus on what that future is even going to look like. You see, this lack of agreement creates the worst possible dynamic. If you think you're in a race for world dominance, you're not going to slow down for safety, are you? But if other people think you're just building a better search engine, they won't treat your efforts with the gravity of, say, a nuclear program. And so, this uncertainty, it just fuels this reckless, headlong rush straight forward. And that leaves us with what might be the fundamental challenge of our time. When the smartest people in the room are pointing in three completely different directions, one pointing to a throne, one to a cliff, and one to a radically new society, how do we, all of us, together, decide which way to go?